Welcome to Friend or Foe, the series where we pick apart the characters from some of our favorite games to figure out who is a friend, someone we don't need to worry will stab us in the back, and who is a foe, someone who'd intentionally bring harm to the group if given the chance. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today we're focusing on utilitarian principles with Joan from The Walking Dead: A New Frontier. As always, you can find a link in the description to a playlist for this series for those long nights where you just want to sit back, relax, and listen to a bunch of breakdowns all at once. Joan is one of 4 leaders of the New Frontier group that runs the city of Richmond in Telltale Games' The Walking Dead: A New Frontier. Her job is to focus on relations with outside groups and act as a sort of liaison to establish partnerships with various other communities. But somewhere along the way, she began ordering raids on settlements instead of trying to set up trade and work with them. Those actions spiraled out of control and eventually led to the downfall of the New Frontier group and nearly destroyed the town of Richmond completely. But why did she make the decision to perform raids on settlements in the first place? And what kind of justification could possibly be used to explain her actions? Is it even possible to justify killing others, including children in other communities? The first time we meet Joan, she's debating what kind of food is the best to make for the community with Clint, the leader in charge of crop and food production. She's saying that her chocolate cake is the ideal food, while Clint is arguing for a hearty spinach soup. This is a comparison that actually relates rather well to the kind of argument that will be made as the story unfolds about how to run things overall. The cake, while tasting really good, is really not healthy overall, and a body, like a community, cannot be sustained on something with no nutritional value. The spinach, though not the most tasty or appetizing meal to many of us, is better overall and will actually sustain someone for the long haul. I'm not even going to beat around the bush here, because the main focus overall of Joan is that she has abused her power and taken the easy way to building up the community, just like she would prefer the easier-to-stomach cake. She's been ordering troops to violently take things from communities and kill anyone who resisted along the way. At first blush, her way of doing things is very wrong because they've been taking things by force, but there is an argument to be made for what she's doing, and we're going to explore both sides of this debate before talking more about Joan overall. On the one hand, there is a utilitarian argument to be made here for doing things Joan's way. Utilitarianism focuses on maximizing human well-being, typically focused on the overall group, while minimizing suffering. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that these raids lead to Richmond becoming a beacon of light in a dark world, a place where people can come from far and wide to find shelter, food, and life-saving medicine. Perhaps it becomes the beginning of rebuilding a better society overall and saves humanity from extinction. In that case, it could be easily argued that the raids Joan is ordering were a net positive for humanity as a whole and were a necessary evil to enable a good end. And the idea of the means justifying the ends has been used to great effect, even in the real world, to justify wars all around the globe. Some common excuses you might be familiar with include, they were going to strike us, so we had to strike first. They were a threat to the world and were treating their people horribly, so it was actually a good thing we stepped in. And some variation of, we needed/wanted the resources they had, though that last one is usually masked in some way through another excuse. That isn't an exhaustive list of the reasons countries have used to justify going to war, but it gives you an idea of what is often widely accepted in society as we know it when it comes to reasons to kill people from other places. And that right there, the fact that those reasons are accepted by society, is kind of the real crux of the issue at hand when it comes to what Joan is doing, because at the end of the day, she can only get away with it if people accept it. Not many people know about what she's doing at first, but word does eventually get out, and the citizens of Richmond would need to decide if they were on board with her actions or not. As an outside observer, it's easy to judge and say everyone should be against what she's doing. But before you jump on that train, you need to think about what you may or may not have supported in your own life and world. Either you think that Joan is wrong, even though you've supported similar things that led to war in the real world, making you a hypocrite, or you are consistent in your principles, either in favor of or against what she's doing. That might be an uncomfortable thing to think about, but these friend or foe videos, much like the philosophy and ethics in games videos, are about more than just the characters. They are about diving into the nuance that we are often afraid to recognize and talking about and connecting things in games with the real world to improve our own lives and the lives of others. If you were living in Richmond, and you found out that the food and medicine you relied on were only available because those things were taken by force from other communities, would you support continuing to take things? Does your answer change if I tell you that the communities we're taking from harbored people who meant to do us harm and would have taken our supplies first if given the chance? If you're concerned about children being involved, what if I told you that the children were being molded into soldiers who, in 10 or 15 years, would be knocking on our gates and coming to steal our supplies and do us harm? See how easy it is to muddy the waters and make the idea sound almost reasonable? In reality, even with what we know about Joan and her actions, we don't know for certain who was in the communities that they were raiding, or what the ultimate outcome will be years from now if the raids are allowed to continue. On the flip side, because we've been focusing this whole time on justifying the raids, we could argue the alternative with something like deontology, where we have a moral duty or obligation to do things a certain way regardless of the outcome. In this argument, we could say something like all life should be preserved and taking even a single life is wrong, meaning Joan's methods are wrong and she should be stopped. This is an extreme example, but it gives you an idea of what that kind of thinking entails. To be consistent with that, though, we would also have to be against things like the death penalty for her, despite what she's done, because deontology isn't about the outcome and isn't focused on punishing or preventing future crimes. Instead, it is focused on moral absolutes and doing things because they are right rather than to get a reward or prevent something bad from happening. Now, it's worth noting that there is a branch of deontology that is a little more flexible in its thinking that could allow for Joan to be killed if we were trying to save someone in the moment. Like if she was attacking and trying to kill David and we killed her to stop her. But there's a fine line that has to be walked to remain consistent in that way of doing things. No matter which approach we take, the decision about what to do and how to handle the situation with Joan is messy to say the least. She makes a compelling case for why the raids have been happening, and how they have helped to secure food and medicine for Richmond. But there is more to her story, and some context that we need to have before the final decision on whether she's a friend or a foe. After getting past the issue of the raids in the story, the next big thing to come up is Joan's treatment of David, Ava, and Tripp. She uses David as a scapegoat for her crimes, and if given the chance, she will put the blame for the raids completely on him and deny all involvement. She has him and Javier arrested, and claims there is going to be a trial before turning it into a public execution instead. That would be bad enough on its own, as she shouldn't be serving as judge, jury, and executioner like that when there's supposed to be a leadership team and when the community should be more involved in the decision about what to do. But to make matters worse, she trots Tripp and Ava out on the stage when Javier shows up and tells him to choose one of them to save. This action just pushes things over the limit, as there is no justification at all that can be used for either of them to be killed. Even if her intentions were pure, and she actually believed that David, Tripp, and Ava were all guilty of some horrific crime, the way she goes about it with the public grandstanding and lying to the crowd about what happened to Badger is just all wrong. There should have been a public trial where both parties were able to lay out evidence and make their case, and the community should have a say through a jury making a decision. They are trying, supposedly, to build a new society in Richmond, and rushing things along like Joan does just doesn't make sense. It isn't even about some imminent threat, because David, Tripp, and Ava are all in custody, and if the leadership team was even halfway competent, Javier would be in custody as well. So now it's time to really dig in and decide if Joan is a friend or a foe. Being completely honest, there aren't really many positive points I can focus on when it comes to Joan and her actions within the game. We talked about how the raids that she orders on the settlements could be justified under the right pretenses, but even in the best of circumstances, that situation walks her right up to the line. What she does to either Tripp or Ava, and what she is trying to do with David, pushes her headfirst over it and squarely into the realm of being labeled as a foe. I always try to look at these characters as objectively as possible when breaking them down, and I try to give them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to their intentions and motivations. Joan is manipulative, but the extent of her manipulation isn't fully clear until she puts a noose around David's neck and trots Tripp and Ava out onto the stage. Prior to all of that, a case could have been made that she had good intentions when it came to the raids and trying to rebuild Richmond up into a place that could have made the world better overall, even if she seemed a bit shifty in doing it. But she shows who she really is as she stands above the community on the gallows. I also want to add here that I'm really leaning into the idea that Telltale just didn't know how to write good villains, as this is the second villain in the series that started off strong and then flamed out way too quick. Carver had the same problem. He was really nuanced and intriguing at first, and even had a case for his view of things being right up until he pushed Reggie off a roof and went full psycho. Joan started off making the case for stealing from other communities for the greater good, and jumped off the cliff in the same way, leaving me extremely disappointed in what could have been. Evil in the world that we live in is seldom as obvious as it appears to be in games, movies, and TV shows, and I personally prefer villains with a more complex and nuanced way of looking at things and doing things, as they are way more realistic most of the time. Imagine for a second that Joan didn't just try to strong-arm everyone and instead got up and subtly lied to everyone in an actual trial, twisting the truth and using Javi and David's words and actions against them to make a case that they were the real bad guys. She could even talk about the raids and how they were only done on communities that consisted of other raiders, that they never really targeted or attacked communities like their own. That could even be made worse if Prescott had been just a little bit bigger with a few families and whatnot, and could wind up being the moment that we, the player, realize how deep her lies go, as we find out at some point that she intentionally told her people to target Prescott, knowing it was a peaceful settlement. I'd even take it a step further and say that there could have been a way to get some kind of hard evidence that wins the favor of the community to our side, but that not having that evidence would mean Joan getting away with her deceit. But instead, we got someone who went from nuanced to hardcore evil in the blink of an eye. Despite that, I know there could be someone out there who really likes Joan and thinks she's not actually a foe, and I welcome you to leave your thoughts on her in the comments below to continue the discussion. Was there something I missed that made her secretly a friend? If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe to Lost in Games on YouTube so you don't miss future episodes of Friend or Foe or my other awesome series, Philosophy and Ethics in Games, where we dive into the stories in games and discover the ethical and historical ties that bind them to the real world. For those who want to help the channel out in other ways, while getting access to cool perks like having your name on the screen, I've got a Patreon, channel memberships on YouTube, and a membership program on my website where pitching in a couple of dollars a month helps me to keep making these kind of videos and to purchase new games to cover in the future. That's all I've got for this one. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.